I remember the silence before anything else. Not the voices, not the accusations, not even my own breathing, just silence. The kind that presses against your chest like the air itself is waiting to see what you'll do next. I was standing in my own kitchen when my younger sister leaned against the marble counter, the same counter I had saved 2 years to install, and smiled like she had already won something I didn't know we were competing for. Honestly, she said, flipping her hair behind her shoulder, the best thing you could do for this family right now is step back. Pause, step back, not move aside, not help more, not even apologize, just fade out. I blinked slowly, waiting for someone to laugh, waiting for my mother to say, "Okay, that's enough." Waiting for my father to clear his throat and change the subject the way he always did when conversations became uncomfortable. But nobody spoke. My mother adjusted the flower arrangement I had bought that morning as if the petals needed more attention than I did. My father stared at his phone, and just like that, something inside me shifted, not broken. Not shattered, just realigned, like a lock finally turning after years of using the wrong key. "All right," I heard myself say, my voice sounded calm, almost distant. She blinked, surprised. She had expected an argument, a scene. Tears she could later describe as proof that I was dramatic. But I didn't give her any of that. I just picked up my coffee mug, turned toward the window, and watched the sunlight hit the backyard I had built piece by piece. Let me take you back for a moment. My name is Amelia Carter, 36 years old. Project manager at a private medical network in North Carolina. Widowed. Yes, that word still feels heavy even when I whisper it. 3 years ago, my husband passed unexpectedly. And overnight, my life became a quiet echo of what it used to be. The house, the one my family now called our family home, wasn't inherited or gifted. It was mine. Every wall painted by my hands, every bill paid from my account, every memory held together by effort no one ever noticed. After everything happened, my parents moved in temporarily. Temporary turned into months. Months turned into years, and slowly my life stopped feeling like mine. My mother reorganized my kitchen to make it more efficient. My father turned the garage into his workshop without asking. My sister. She treated my home like a boutique hotel, streaming accounts, packages delivered daily, borrowed money that never returned. And I let it happen because I believed being strong meant carrying everyone else. Because I thought love looked like sacrifice. Because I didn't realize that silence can look a lot like permission. 6 months ago, my sister got engaged. Suddenly, my living room became a planning office. Decor boards spread across the couch. Vendor calls echoing through hallways. My credit card started showing charges I didn't recognize, deposits, reservations, design fees. Whenever I asked, the answer was always the same. It's just temporary, we'll figure it out later. Later never came. Instead, that afternoon arrived, the afternoon she told me to step back from my own family. I watched her now as she scrolled through her phone, already moving on from the conversation like it had been nothing more than a scheduling update. My chest tightened, not with anger, with clarity. That night, after everyone went to bed, I walked through the house slowly. The hallway lights glowed warm against the walls. My husband's photo still hung above the staircase, the only thing no one dared move. I stopped in front of it. "They want me to fade away," I whispered. The words sounded strange in the quiet. For a long time I stood there remembering who I used to be, confident, laughing, certain about where I belonged. Then I turned and walked into the small office at the end of the hall, the room no one used anymore. I opened my laptop. A blank document glowed on the screen. Title, "What I've Given." At first I typed slowly, mortgage payments. Utilities, groceries, emergency expenses. Numbers stacked quietly, line after line. I wasn't angry, I was curious. Curious about how much of myself had disappeared while I thought I was helping. By midnight, the list had grown longer than I expected. My hands hovered over the keyboard. A strange calm settled over me. If they wanted distance, maybe they didn't realize what would disappear with it. The next morning, the house was empty. Sunlight filtered through the curtains, soft and peaceful, like nothing had changed. But everything had. I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop open, bank statements spread around me like puzzle pieces. Receipts, emails, old notes. Each one told a story I had ignored for years. A payment here, a favor there, a pattern forming quietly beneath the surface. And as the numbers added up, something became clear. I wasn't just supporting my family, I had built an entire world that depended on me while convincing myself I was lucky to be included in it. My phone buzzed, a message from my sister. "Did you confirm the venue deposit yet?" I stared at the screen. No greeting, no acknowledgement of yesterday, just expectation. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, then I typed a single word. Sure, she never noticed how short my answers had become. She never noticed how quiet I had grown. They had stopped seeing me long before I stopped speaking. That afternoon, while checking the mailbox, my neighbor Mrs. Collins called out from across the lawn. "You doing okay, Amelia?" she asked gently. I hesitated. Most people don't see what happens behind closed doors, but sometimes someone does. "I'm fine," I said automatically. She tilted her head, studying me. "You've been carrying a lot for a long time," she said softly. "Just remember, being kind doesn't mean being invisible." Her words stayed with me long after she walked back inside. Invisible, was that what I had become? Or was I finally learning how to step out of a story that was never written for me? That night, I opened a new folder on my computer. Exit plan. Not out of anger, not out of revenge, but out of understanding. If they wanted me to fade away, I would, just not the way they expected. And that was the moment everything truly began to change. I thought leaving would end the noise. I was wrong. Silence doesn't make people forget you, it makes them imagine you. 3 weeks after I walked out, the messages started coming in waves. At first, they were short, almost casual. My younger sister asking about a document she couldn't find. My father forwarding a bank notification as if nothing had happened. My mother sending a single-line text. "Are you eating properly?" I didn't reply. Not because I didn't care, but because I finally understood something that had taken me years to learn. Every response I gave them before had turned into a weapon against me. Every explanation became proof that I still needed their approval. So I chose stillness. And that stillness began to change everything. At work, people started noticing a difference in me. I wasn't rushing to fix everyone's problems anymore. I spoke less, observed more. For the first time, I wasn't trying to be indispensable. Ironically, that's when my value became obvious. My manager called me into his office one afternoon. He didn't smile, he just slid a file across the desk. "We're restructuring the team," he said, "and I need someone who can operate without drama." Without drama. The words hit differently. For years, I had been surrounded by emotional chaos at home, arguments disguised as concern, advice disguised as control. And suddenly here I was in a quiet office being recognized not for sacrifice but for composure. I accepted the role, not because I wanted to prove anything to my family, but because I wanted to prove something to myself. Telephone receiver, the call that almost broke me. The second call came late at night. Unknown number again. I let it ring twice before answering. It was my sister's fiancé. His voice sounded strained, like someone trying to keep a glass from shattering in his hands. "I think you should know, things are getting complicated here." I didn't ask what he meant. I already knew: budgets collapsing, vendors arguing, plans falling apart without the quiet systems I used to maintain behind the scenes. He paused, waiting for me to offer help. I didn't. "I hope it works out," I said gently, and ended the call. The moment the line went dead, my hands started shaking, not from guilt, but from realization. For the first time in my life, I wasn't rushing back to fix a mess that wasn't mine. Jigsaw flashback, the invisible role growing up, I had become the family's silent architect. If something broke, I repaired it. If someone fought, I mediated. If money ran short, I rearranged priorities. And because I did everything quietly, no one ever noticed the weight I carried until I was gone. That's the thing about invisible roles. People only see the structure when it collapses. Fire the unexpected news. A week later, a mutual acquaintance posted photos from a pre-wedding dinner. The smiles looked forced. My sister's expression, tight, controlled, wasn't the confident face she used to wear at home. Comments under the post hinted at tension. Words like stress, last-minute changes, and family pressure appeared again and again. I closed the app without reacting. Revenge isn't loud. Sometimes it's just stepping aside and letting reality speak. That night, I rearranged my apartment. Not because I needed to, but because I wanted to feel ownership over something that was entirely mine. I replaced the broken lamp, bought a plant for the balcony, cooked dinner slowly without rushing to answer anyone's demands. The quiet wasn't lonely anymore, it was freedom. And for the first time, I realized something terrifying and beautiful at the same time. I wasn't waiting for an apology, I was moving forward without it. A few days later, my mother finally sent a long message. No accusations, no guilt, just a simple confession. The house feels different without you. I stared at the words for a long time. In the past, that message would have pulled me back instantly. I would have rushed over, ready to fix everything, even if it meant losing myself again. But now I understood the difference between love and responsibility. Love invites you back, responsibility traps you. I typed a short reply, "I hope you're all okay." Nothing more, and for the first time, that was enough. The real twist didn't come from my family. It came from inside me. Because while they were trying to rebuild the world they lost, I was building a version of myself they had never seen before, someone calm, detached, and quietly unstoppable. And I didn't know it yet, but the next decision my sister would make was about to change everything, not just for her wedding, but for the truth she had been hiding from everyone. I didn't expect the next crack to come so quickly. It was a Tuesday morning. Quiet, rain tapping softly against my window like someone asking permission to enter. I was halfway through my coffee when my phone vibrated, a long message from an unknown number. I almost ignored it. Almost. But something told me to read it. "You don't know me well, but I think you deserve to know what's really happening." My chest tightened. It was my sister's fiancé again. Only this time he wasn't calling for help. He was telling the truth. He explained how the wedding planning had turned into constant arguments. Budgets shifting overnight. Decisions changing without warning. People blaming each other for problems no one wanted to admit existed. And then he wrote something that made me pause. "They keep saying you left at the worst time, but honestly, I think everything was already falling apart." I read that line 3 times. For years, I believed I was the reason things worked. That if I just stayed longer, tried harder, sacrificed more, nothing would break. But now I was hearing something different. Maybe the cracks were always there. Maybe I was never the glue, just the person covering the damage. That realization didn't feel powerful. It felt heavy, because if I wasn't responsible for holding everything together, then I also wasn't responsible for watching it collapse. I leaned back in my chair and closed my eyes, breathing in. Slowly, letting the silence stretch longer than it ever had before. This wasn't revenge in the way people imagine, no shouting, no dramatic confrontations, just distance. And distance was louder than any argument. Later that evening, my sister posted a polished video online, smiling, laughing, pretending everything was perfect. The caption read, "Some people leave, but we keep moving forward." The comments filled quickly. Support, sympathy, questions. And beneath all of it, a quiet accusation aimed at me. Old me would have reacted instantly. I would have typed a long explanation trying to defend myself, trying to make strangers understand a story they were never part of. But instead, I locked my phone and walked away, because silence had become my loudest answer. Her video triggered a memory I had buried. The last night before I left, we were standing in the kitchen, voices low but sharp. She accused me of being too serious, of ruining the mood whenever I pointed out practical issues. I remember looking at her, really looking, and realizing she didn't want solutions. She wanted validation. And for the first time, I didn't give it. That moment wasn't dramatic. No one stormed out, but something invisible ended between us. While their world grew louder, mine grew quieter and strangely stronger. My new role at work expanded quickly. Meetings where people actually listened to my ideas. Projects where I wasn't just fixing mistakes but shaping direction. One afternoon, my manager said something that stayed with me. "You don't react emotionally, you observe first. That's rare." He didn't know how hard that skill had been to learn. Every calm response now was built from years of chaos I refused to repeat. 3 days later, another message arrived from home, not from my sister, from my father, short, direct. "We need some documents you handled before, the bank is asking questions." I stared at the screen, feeling a strange calm wash over me. For years, I managed paperwork quietly, organizing finances, tracking agreements, making sure everything stayed transparent. After I left, they had taken control themselves, and now something wasn't aligning. I replied with only the essentials, neutral, professional, distant, no blame, no emotion, just facts. And somehow that felt more powerful than any argument I could have made. The next week, the calls stopped completely. No updates. No emotional messages, just silence. At first, I thought it meant they were angry, but then I realized something deeper. They were adjusting to a version of me that didn't revolve around their expectations anymore. And that shift scared them more than my absence ever did. A private moment one evening, I walked past a mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. Not because she looked different, but because she looked steady, grounded, unapologetically calm. For so long, my identity had been shaped by how much I could endure. Now it was shaped by how much I refused to carry. And in that quiet moment, I understood something important. The real revenge wasn't proving them wrong. It was proving to myself that I didn't need their version of me anymore. Just when I thought the distance between us had settled into something permanent, a new message arrived late at night. This time from my sister, only 3 words. "We need you." I stared at the screen, heart pounding, not with urgency, but with a calm curiosity. Because the next choice I made wouldn't just change the wedding, it would finally reveal the secret they had hidden behind all those perfect smiles. I didn't reply to her message right away. "We need you." 3 words and years of memories rushed back all at once. I placed my phone face down on the table and walked to the window. Outside, the city lights flickered against the glass, blurred by a thin layer of rain. For a long time, I just stood there, breathing slowly, letting the silence stretch longer than my old self ever could. Because the truth was, they didn't need me. They needed the version of me who used to carry everything quietly, and she wasn't coming back. The next afternoon, I agreed to meet them in a public cafe, neutral ground, no family house. No emotional traps. When I walked in, the air felt heavier than I expected. My father avoided eye contact. My mother held her cup too tightly, and my sister, she looked exhausted in a way I had never seen before. No dramatic greetings, no apologies, just silence. I sat down slowly, placing my bag beside me like a shield. "What's going on?" I asked, keeping my voice calm. They exchanged glances before my father finally spoke. "The wedding arrangements, some agreements, they're questioning certain things." He slid a folder toward me, documents, numbers, emails, things I used to manage. Only now, small inconsistencies were surfacing, details overlooked, decisions rushed, promises made without understanding the consequences. I flipped through the pages quietly, not judging, just observing. My sister finally spoke. Her voice wasn't angry, it was fragile. "You always made it look easy," she said. "We didn't realize how much you were doing." For a moment, I felt the old ache rise in my chest, the part of me that wanted to say it wasn't easy. But instead, I stayed quiet. Because recognition doesn't always come with accountability, and I needed to see which one this was. As the conversation unfolded, pieces started connecting. Decisions had been made quickly after I left, contracts signed without full review, timelines promised without proper planning. Pressure built from every direction, and instead of slowing down, they tried to push harder. The result? Confusion, tension, and people starting to question the entire process. No one had done anything intentionally harmful. But the illusion of control had finally cracked. They looked at me, waiting for instructions, waiting for me to take over like before. I closed the folder gently and pushed it back across the table. "I can explain what these documents mean," I said slowly, "but I'm not stepping back into the role I had before." The words felt heavier than anything I had ever said to them. My mother blinked, surprised. My sister's shoulders dropped slightly, not in anger but in realization. For the first time, I wasn't rescuing them. I was guiding them without losing myself. We talked for almost an hour, no shouting, no accusations. Just truth layered slowly between pauses. I explained where the misunderstandings likely came from, how certain agreements could be clarified, and which conversations they needed to have directly. At one point, my father said quietly, "You've changed." I nodded. "Yes." No defense, no explanation, just acceptance. As we stood up to leave, my sister hesitated. "I thought you abandoned us," she whispered. I looked at her carefully, choosing my words with intention. "I didn't abandon you," I said softly. "I stopped abandoning myself." The sentence hung in the air long after I walked away, and for the first time, I didn't look back to see their reactions, because I didn't need to. That night, messages started arriving, not dramatic apologies but small acknowledgments. My mother asking how my new job was going, my father sending a simple "thank you." Even my sister shared an update about fixing one of the issues we discussed. It wasn't a full resolution, but it was different. They weren't asking me to carry everything anymore. They were learning to stand on their own, and that shift felt like justice in its quietest form. Just when I thought the story was settling into something peaceful, a final revelation surfaced. An old email thread forwarded accidentally, one that showed who had truly pushed the narrative that I left at the worst time. Someone I never expected. And suddenly, the entire story began to make sense. Because the last chapter wasn't about proving my worth, it was about revealing the truth that had been hidden behind everyone's silence. The hidden betrayal is exposed. Family regrets losing her emotional justice lands powerfully, and the ending delivers that viral, satisfying closure your revenge audience stays for. I didn't expect the final piece of the story to arrive in such a quiet way. No dramatic confrontation, no late-night argument, just a forwarded email sitting silently in my inbox. At first, I thought it was another document clarification. Something small, routine, but when I opened the thread, my breathing slowed. Because the words on the screen weren't new, they were old conversations from weeks before I left. And hidden between polite sentences was a narrative being built about me, a version of events that painted me as distant, difficult, too serious. Not by my parents, not even by my sister, but by someone who had been standing close enough to influence everything, someone who believed the wedding needed a softer image, a lighter tone, less structure. Someone who quietly turned my boundaries into a problem. I leaned back in my chair, letting the realization settle. This wasn't about blame, it was about understanding. For weeks, I wondered why my leaving had been framed like betrayal. Now I saw it clearly. Small comments repeated often enough become truth in people's minds. She's too controlling. She worries too much. She doesn't understand the emotional side. Each sentence seemed harmless alone. Together, they created distance between me and the people I loved. And when I finally stepped away, that distance became the story everyone believed, until reality began to rewrite it. I didn't rush to expose anyone. That would have been the old version of me, desperate to correct every misunderstanding. Instead, I waited, because truth has a way of surfacing when people start asking their own questions. A few days later, my sister called. Her voice sounded softer than I had ever heard it. "I read something today," she said slowly, "something I should have noticed earlier." There was a long pause between us, not uncomfortable, just honest. "I think I let other people's opinions shape how I saw you," she admitted. The words landed gently, not as an apology forced by guilt, but as recognition earned through experience. And strangely, that felt more powerful than any dramatic apology ever could. We met again, this time walking through a quiet park instead of sitting across a table. No documents, no tension, just two sisters learning to see each other without expectations. "I thought strength meant being easy to be around," she said at one point. "But you were strong in a different way, and I didn't understand it." I smiled slightly, not because the moment felt victorious, but because it felt real. "I wasn't perfect either," I replied. "I stayed silent too long." The conversation didn't erase the past, but it changed the future. And sometimes that's enough. Gradually, the atmosphere at home shifted. My father began handling decisions more carefully, asking questions before agreeing to anything. My mother stopped sending emotional pressure disguised as concern and started sharing simple updates instead. They didn't say, "We regret losing you," in one dramatic moment. It appeared slowly in their tone, in their respect, in the way they stopped expecting me to fix everything. One evening, my mother sent a message that stayed with me longer than any apology. "The house taught us how much you were holding together only after you left." I stared at the words, feeling something warm and bittersweet settle in my chest. Not revenge, not triumph, just balance. As the wedding approached again, this time calmer, quieter, more grounded, they asked if I wanted to attend. Old me would have felt obligated. New me paused. I thought about everything that had changed, not just around me, but inside me. And then I answered honestly, yes, but as a guest. Not as the planner, not as the problem solver, just as myself. The silence on the other end of the phone felt respectful, almost relieved, because they understood what that meant. On the day of the event, I arrived late, intentionally. The room looked different than before. Less pressure, Less performance, more authenticity. My sister hugged me tightly, her voice soft against my shoulder. I'm glad you came. I didn't scan the room for approval. I didn't step in to adjust details. I just stood there present. And in that quiet moment, I realized the biggest twist of all. The story was never about proving I was right. It was about stepping away long enough for everyone, including myself, to see the truth clearly. The person who once shaped the narrative against me avoided eye contact that day. Not out of fear, but out of understanding. Because reality had already corrected the story. No confrontation needed, no dramatic scene required, just time and silence. I used to believe revenge meant winning against someone. Now I know it means returning to yourself. They didn't lose me because I walked away. They lost me because they forgot to see me while I was still there. And when they finally did, I wasn't the same person anymore. Not broken, not angry, just free. Free to stand in a room that once drained me and feel nothing but calm. Sometimes justice doesn't arrive with noise. Sometimes it arrives as a quiet realization that the version of you they underestimated